Well, hello, and thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to take a minute and listen to what this particular basic deliverance course is talking about in regards to three-root legal rights that we have given to demons. You know, one of the things that people hate is the word demon, because we've used that term so until it really scares even kids, and they hear us say, oh, they got a demon. But we want to kind of take this lesson and take a big, broad look at where are we really in our family tree. I wanted to talk about those three legal rights that we have given. And when I'm talking about legal rights, I pray that you're taking a pen and writing all this down. And hopefully you'll be able to come into our practicum class, because it really does not do us any good to get a lot of head knowledge and no practice, okay? And so when I talk about these legal rights in these three roots that I want to talk about briefly today, this is going to be part probably one of this B2, because I don't know if I'm going to get to cover majority of what I really want to get out of this lesson. So I really want to make sure that I, build a premise of what I want to say on this level of the basic in regards to a legal right, and then also to kind of cover some of the things that we need to look at in regards to, these three roots that we are allowing demons to have the rights to really rest in our homes and in our lives. So let's talk briefly first about what is a legal right. So first of all, we need to look at to make sure that we know that because a demon, if you want to use spirit, that's fine too, but every demon within a person, they have been given a legal right. Now, if you go back in Genesis chapter 15, you'll see where, the covenant was going along there. God was telling Abraham about the covenant and what was going to take place. But what was very, very strategic, I believe, that we need to go back and look in this chapter, looking at verse 13 in chapter 15, he says, and he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also the nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward they come out with great substance. So they're going to come out with great substance. He said, and thou shalt go to thy fathers, go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. Okay, so he's getting him prepared. And then he said, but in the fourth generation they shall come hither again. Why? For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So that means the iniquity. So iniquity is not used a lot as far as in delivering a message in the Bible or as we teach or preach. But we need to know that the iniquity does still work in many generations. And one of the things that I wanted to share here, let me put my notes out here, in 2 Thessalonians 2, 6 through 8, I'm going to be reading in the New Living Translation, and it says, and you know what is holding him back, for he can be revealed only when his time comes. For this lawlessness is already at work. That means working secretly, and it will remain secret until the one who is holding it back steps out of the way. Then the man of lawlessness will be revealed, but the Lord Jesus will slay him with the breath of his mouth and destroy him by the splendor of his coming. Now, in order for us to really, really get a revelation on how the legal rights come, every time a demon begins to know that there is a weak link or there is iniquity that has been ignored, that has been unrepented, that has been where the person has really, really come to a revelation that this is still in my bloodline or this is still working even in me. We have many leaders and many people who are fire baptized even that don't want to deal with these three root matters. And these three root matters is one of the ones that has given legal rights to the demonic realm in lives today. And so what God is saying to us is that Satan is going to have a legal right. That means because Satan is more like a legalist, He knows exactly what the right is, and he knows what the wrong is, and he knows the scripture just like we know. But the problem is that it's all perverted. He wants to make it appear to be right in the eyes of what is wrong, those people who are willing. But we got to learn how to think on the level of what the devil is saying, but not act on the level of what the devil is saying. So we need to think, meaning know that work, that fruit. We need to learn to think, and we need to make sure that we are fighting for the rights that we should have for our bloodline and for our own lives. And so we need to learn to think like Jesus, but know what the devil is trying to do, knowing the unfruitful works that it's trying to do. So you got to think and know. And I always say expect hell. So that means you know that the fruit of this type of thing is there to pull down what is good and what is right. So we have to advocate. We have to become like a lawyer. We have to become like a warrior, better word to speak. But in every home and in every ministry, in everyone that is a leader, many times we overlook these three particular ones, and one of the most one overlooked is the one where we just tend to believe that, I said, I let it go, and it's done. But actually, people are walking around in unforgiveness. I was walking around preaching internationally, and I believe that the Lord had anointed me, and I was packing the power and preaching. But guess what? Actually, that was nothing going to actually come out of that to the fullness as it possibly could, because I was only doing surface ministry at the time as an evangelist. But I believe that the Lord could have did so many exploits and so many other signs and wonders could have really manifested if I had really, really forgiven my ex-husband for trying to kill me. At that particular time, I wanted to make sure that I traveled and was a hireling at that time. And I know I'm talking to somebody who's probably still a hireling today that may be listening on the sound of my voice, who is doing ministry primarily for the dollar, for, getting paid for what you believe that God is saying for you to do so that you can make sure that you get the dollar to survive off of. If that's what you do, to each his own. But I believe after learning that this part of me, I knew that this call in my life was not going to be about the dollar. Now, let me get back to the other part where I'm talking about these three. Now, these three are ones that I believe that many of us could be working with people that you're counseling, have those in your ministry. And those three, number one, is rejection. Now, number one, rejection, we know the rejection, and then the next one would be the root. Now, the part that this other R, they call it the 3 R's, what my dad talked about in his deliverance manual, talked about rejection and talked about the root of bitterness, and we know that rebellion is the other one. But, as I said before, this unforgiveness, and this is how this ripples to the 4th generation, because this becomes a curse in the family. Now, many of us should be standing in the gap. As I get into these particular three, the ultimate one that I want to get to the meat of the matter of is unforgiveness. And this is the one that has kept so many in so many different realms of not getting the fullness of healing in their lives. I mean, even sickness and disease. And so I want to share about first, let's hit the first one, rejection. Now, rejection is a big one because we have a lot of people who are walking in the realm of a black sheep and still are facing black sheep mentality because they never dealt with their rejection. Now, rejection includes the fear of rejection, even self-rejection. So we've got to make sure we understand from generation to generation, these demons will attack people because, first of all, many of the people that have been rejected, they've been rejected from the womb. And this is why we got to make sure that when we're sending someone through deliverance, part of the problem is that we want to work on sending a person through a deliverance of something that many of the parents or many of the individuals have given these spirits permission to stay. That's the legal right that they have been given. But part of the problem is that we don't understand, and many of us need to get this understanding about, is there are primarily 4, I believe there's 4 different equal parts to taking a person through deliverance. First of all, we got to make sure that we teach it. okay? We got to make sure that we give them free deliverance sessions. And that's why I say it all the time. You cannot just think because you laid the hands on a person, they fell out and they look like the countenance changed and stuff like that. Well, yeah, the demon left, and I guess they came back when they got back to the house, or even before they even left off the church parking lot, because many of them only had the surface thing. The thing is still in the root of the matter. And so we need to be looking at, of course, like I said first, the equal parts. That's teaching. And then number 2, free deliverance session. And then number 3, counseling. And then number 4, we need to make sure that as we counsel and as we cast out, we are doing a blend. Now you're doing a regimen, right? Because now you're working on getting them to understand that I'm fixing to cast this out of you. But you got to prepare them first, okay? I've been saying that word over and over again. We got to prepare the people, and you got to get them prepared for counseling. Now, what the devil don't want, so he's going to fight against this deliverance process. Many people have come to me in time past, and many of them will come and they'll say, yes, I want this to happen. I want this out. But the enemy will tell them many things. And most of the time, they say she's a witch. I laugh because when the Holy Spirit tells me that, they say I'm a witch. And he said, but they're going to see that this is an opportunity for them to go through the deliverance process. And so one of the biggest problems that many of the people are trying to do deliverance about today, as we look at these 3, one of the things is they can't cast out something that they haven't taught. This is the reason why many people are ignorant. So they have to get to the root cause of the matter. They got to get to the root and not just the surface issue that they're trying to tell them that's wrong with them. So we've got to make sure that we cannot be weak in this area. And then the second place that we're weak in is that many of these demons, after we say we cast them out, we're thinking that they're out, but they come back because they never got that extensive, thorough regimen counseling. But the third part is that the weakness is there because many of them need this part that needs to take place across the pulpit. So people are going to churches that they believe that their lives have been impacted and they believe that they have been touched. But these 3 roots, that bitterness, that, like I said, that root of bitterness, that rejection, and that rebellion. So they're there, and many of them have to get these things uprooted about the pain, the pain of the rejection, the thing that they keep feeling that they are feeling from the parents. And we have many leaders today who are preaching, who don't even speak to their parents, don't even serve their parents, don't even talk to their parents. And so they have these roots of bitterness. They have this unforgiveness, and they preach real intellectually well. But to really be packing the power to really send some healing and delivering power to the person that they're laying their hands on, and prayerfully we'll get into that later about transferring the spirits, we got to make sure that we look at the teaching part of this deliverance to make sure that we first come to the knowledge of the truth about our own selves, okay? So there's a large, great preaching group of ministers and leaders who are preaching about conversion, who are preaching even about deliverance. But they have not brought the people to the knowledge of the truth about deliverance. So they have, why is that in Dr. Murray? Well, they have little practical teaching. That means what we're trying to do here for those that will come, we will do the practicum. You've got to practice this thing. You've got to get a revelation understanding about the power that's inside of you. And so deliverance will not completely come unless there's a balance. We got to have a balance. We can't just give people scriptures and think that that's all that's going to take place. We got to know that you got to just keep looking at the way Jesus did. When the people were exhausted, they were still hungry, they were desperate, they wanted this power, this healing for their bodies and for their families, and they just went wherever he went. But guess many times he said, go and get the food for the people. The people are famished. So he had to feed the people first so that they may hear. Same thing, so they may understand, so they may believe. Same thing. How are we going to get the people to be able to understand, to take and eat of the word, so the word can give them strength, so the word can keep them strong? We got to make sure we understand that we've got to feed the truth of where they are. This is in you. You do like women. You are full of hate. You are bitter. You are feeling rejected. You are, cursing your own self. So we got to make sure that they come to the root of the truth so that these disciplines that we're giving them, that the demon can't keep exercising those types of deceptions in their lives, and they never, ever get an understanding. And so then we have to also teach them how to study for themselves, okay? So once they come to the knowledge of the truth, now you're no longer just giving them all of this word, and it's like pouring oil into water, and it's doing nothing but just being on the surface. You know that oil ain't going through that water. It's just going to sit there on the surface. So we need to make sure that people can begin to live out, and those people who are standing in the gap, those people who are there to help them come to the knowledge of the truth, are giving them revelations of an understanding so that they can see what these spirits are doing to them. Now, as we get into the part in regards to the mind and talking about the passive mind, I believe then we'll get a greater understanding about these. But these three, rejection, of course, as I said before, many of them have been put in situations where we have some parents and some leaders who have had, multiple wives or been married with kids have been birthed out of, either just having sex or whatever, just sin, period. But when we have those, even at our grandkids and people who are not married or from baby daddy to baby daddy, we got to remember that these are seeds of curses that's from generation to generation. As I read to you in regards to Genesis chapter 15, this fourth generation curse is what I talked about in my new book, talking about the visiting right cycles. Many of them are coming back to visit, and many of them are already visited in many of the generations. That's why we got to not only just pray, we got to watch, and we got to war. And so that's why it's important for us to do deliverance, because the rejection, the root of bitterness, and rebellion, okay, these three that we have given permission and are not dealing with in our family, with our children, in relationships that we have, many of them are creating so many other attacks that's bouncing back to us. So we have a responsibility to make sure we look at, where am I feeling even self-rejected about? Why do I reject myself? Well, is there a fear of failure, a fear of rejection? Where are these coming from? Matthew 5:3 tells us that the rejections give us this poor in spirit feeling. And so rejection is defined as simply a reject, okay? That means that you feel renounced, you disregarded, you discarded, or you feel excluded. Many of us just feel like a throwaway. Now, I say us, this is because I once was a black sheep. I don't receive that anymore. Many of us that come to the knowledge of the truth, then we know how to renounce the thing that had tried to hold us captive. But I believe that I am blessed and highly favored, and you are too, if you once were a black sheep. But those who are still suffering from rejection, many of them will self-reject. And so we got to go through many different levels of spirits that will attack the people so that we can make sure that we uproot those that the enemy has gotten legal permission to stay because of their mindset. So we will talk about that next week. But bitterness, of course, is the opposite of forgiveness. And this is why unforgiveness is the big meat of the matter that we have to get to, that is the real culprit, okay? Unforgiveness. But bitterness, it includes resentment. It includes that violence and that temper, that anger, those things that even cause people to murder, okay? We got to make sure we understand that this is a place that many of us that have so much sickness in our bodies, and so many people, I know I was so bitter when I was married with my ex-husband that I just could not believe what he had done to me toward the end of the marriage. I mean, I literally got sick. My intestines got so twisted up and messed up, I wound up with a colostomy. You better hear me. This can cause so much sickness and disease. And this spirit of bitterness, it actually tells us that in Romans 13, chapter 3, verse 13, 14, verses 13 and 14, that the full of cursing and bitterness will come, okay? And Ephesians 4:31-32 tells us bitterness and forgiveness has to come. If you don't deal with your bitterness, it's going to cause a curse that will cause you to rebel, that will cause you to have all types of angry spirits that you think that you're fine, and then guess what? You're going to rebel. You're going to rebel even against those people that you think that you are being humble with. Many times this is such a subtle spirit that you will become so shrewd and so slick that you actually practicing witchcraft because you think that you are doing what you think is right in your own eyes. But if you're having any of these feelings, any of this unforgiveness, these are common spirits that the enemy has used for decades that has caused many of us to have so many root issues that we can't get the person to really come out of it because we don't want to address it. We got to just call a spade a spade. But rebellion, we got to know that rebellion, the Bible already shows us that it includes our own self-will, okay? It includes stubbornness and, of course, disobedience, and I've already said anti-submissiveness. We're not humble. We just given a form of it to make it look like I really honor you. This is my pastor. When actually, if you honor them and you would honor the God in them and you would do what God is saying to do through them. So I really believe that many of us don't recognize this spirit because many of us have such bitterness in us that it has rolled over to such a place that we can't even see, and that is unforgiveness. Okay? So the rejection, the bitterness, and the rebellion, but unforgiveness is our greatest culprit that the enemy is trying his best to keep us in the place that we suffer so many infirmities, so many sickness, so many diseases that our family members are held captive for the iniquity to continue. Now, in order for us to be very, very effective, there's a couple of things that I want to share that I first think that we got to look at when we're working on people to get them into the place of forgiveness. First of all, we got to make them understand that this place where they're bitter at, they got to admit it, okay? That was the hardest part for me. When I went to my pre-deliverance counseling for myself, I had to admit that I was very bitter with my ex-husband. But the thing was that I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to say that because I felt like I was too holier than thou to admit that I was very bitter. And most important is the fact that we've got to get not only ourselves free, because when we get ourselves free, we then can help process that unforgiveness in our bloodline. And so here's the thing that I want to leave you with in this message for today. This is very important for us to look at. How in the world am I going to deal with these things in Dr. Murphy? How am I going to look at the practical part of this? Well, first of all, we got to find out what is the problem. What is the root ground matter in my own bloodline? You know, what are some things that I need to sit down and discuss with my family member, that is your mother, your father, if they're alive, you know, or maybe an aunt or uncle, or maybe an older sibling that can share some things with you that they see that's constantly active. This is some of the steps that you may want to take when you're doing your pre-deliverance counseling. One of the things that I found very important is for us to make sure that we do the complete assessment so we can do the family tree. Because if we don't do the family tree and we don't find strategies to get them to work on making sure that they stand in the gap, okay? Because many of us, if we really think about it, there's lots of spiritual oppression, there's a lot of tormenting demons that are really causing schizophrenia, causing bipolar, and believe it or not, schizophrenia and bipolar, those are on the rampage today, and so many families that they're so fully medicated to the point that we can't even believe God because we just want them to calm down, so we just let them keep taking the medicine. But by our power and the blood of Jesus that is in us, who say that we are blood-bought and that we are packing the power that he's given us to do the supernatural, we got to believe, God, that these demons of these schizophrenia, bipolar, and all these addictive behaviors can be destroyed. They got to want it, though. That's the key. They got to want to at least have a light of hope. If they just have a light, that means if there's just a crack of hope, then there you are in the gap, okay? So when you start thinking about these experiences going on in your family, we start thinking about those that God has put to your hand that you are responsible for. Because if God sent them to you, then you are responsible for sending them through the deliverance process. So we're talking about the basic part of this class right now. So I'm trying to get you to see some things you got to look at, these ungodly practices, these things that are going on, you know, Satanism, Freemasons, you know, Mason, occult stuff, Ouija boards, witchcraft, tarot cards, you know, palm reading, all these things. We won't leave our open doors, but people got, you know, all these different pornography and all these things was going on in my house in regards to pornography and things like that. But I thank God that I had boldness enough to make sure that it did not taint where I was. I made sure I covered myself, and I repented constantly for my house and my family. I then was in the gap. Now, here's the deal. I created an altar. Many of you don't even have, let alone an altar in your house built for your family and yourself, let alone the Ten Commandments. So I believe, number one, get the Ten Commandments somewhere on the wall, somewhere, wherever your altar is in your prayer room. I believe the Ten Commandments should be somewhere. I got mine in the living room. One of the reasons why we need to have the Ten Commandments is that we set a standard to let hell know this is who's ruling here, Jesus is Lord. And number one, you never quote them out every day, but anybody entering, they know Jesus is Lord of your house, and you believe that you're walking and doing your very best to repent daily for any of them that you are not trying to walk fully and fruitfully in. But the most important part that I think is important for us to look at this iniquity, for us to make sure that we look at and try to overcome the hindrances. So one of those ways is to make sure you build the altar, okay? So the altar helps endow your house. It helps prepare your family tree to know that we are fighting against the lawlessness. We're fighting against the sins and the iniquities that may be working in our bloodline that's causing sickness and disease to become rapid. Every time I see cancer and all these things on the news, it just makes my heart bleed and cringe, because there's so much that we have from generation to generation that many people don't believe that we need to fight against. We've got to fight. We've got to stand proxy. We've got to stand. It may not be cancer in our bloodline. We got so much hate and unforgiveness in our bloodline, to the point that I don't even know what else to do but other than say, God, here I am. So we are here saying, I want to stand proxy. What is proxy then, Sandy? What does that mean? Well, first of all, we can't do proxy until we understand that an altar has to be built so that we can fight in our houses, okay? The Bible tells us in Psalm 68:6 that God said the solitary in families. He bringeth out those who are bound with chains, right? But the rebellious dwell in the dry land. We need to make sure that we become the gatekeeper. Many of us are already gatekeepers, but many of us are not standing what? Proxy. So what is proxy? Well, first of all, we know that a gatekeeper is one who guards. And that means that we're there. We're guarding, we're watching, we're praying, we're fasting. And see, back in the time that these were like gates of protection, okay? These were like heavy gates. And within these walls, going in and coming out, they was able to shut the gate. The gatekeeper is one who makes sure that things don't come in and they know what's coming in and what's going out. Many of us already know what's coming in our house and what's going out. We got it in us, and many of us are allowing and getting along with hell. But like I said before, we got to learn to take authority. That means we need to make sure that we are overlooking, we are watching, and we're making sure that we're ensuring the order and the reverence of God in our house. Trying to slow it down, but I'm just so passionate about this type of teaching. But we need to know that if we're going to stand proxy, that means that this word means that you are taking authority. That means you're acting or you're standing in the place of another. And so that means that's a serious fight. So you can't tell everybody I'm going to stand proxy for you. I know I'm not. Because I don't want all that hell bouncing back at me. It's great warfare. But what I will tell you is that I'm standing in the gap. Yes, I am. So there is a difference. So that when I'm standing proxy, that means I am standing in the stead of you. I can't stand in the stead of everybody. Now, I'm proxy for my son, my daughter, and all that, and some of them hits I don't want. But who else are they going to have? So I have to stand proxy. I have to take authority. And many of you need to make sure that you don't be trying to stand proxy for something that's still yet working in you. So you have to look at where am I in these legalistic realms of rejection, bitterness, and rebellion and unforgiveness that I have given legal rights to in my own life, before I try to stand proxy for anybody. We need to make sure that when we're standing in this place, that means now we're asking God. We're standing in the stead saying, Lord, mercy, please, I trust you that you're going to use my love, my forgiveness, my repentance on their behalf and save my boy. That's what I holler out every chance I get. You promised me. Here we go. And I'm standing proxy saying, I repented for his daddy. I repented for my generation. I repented for my sins. Now I believe you. I'm standing proxy for my boy. I know I'm talking to somebody. So we got to believe God. These are one of the highest acts of intercession that we can ever do when we stand proxy. That's why it's very, very serious when you're standing proxy. But when you're standing in the gap, now it's different. When you stand in the gap, that means that now you're interceding. That means you're in between. Okay, that means that you're asking God to literally allow your spirit of love to go in between. So it's kind of, think of it this way. Think of a brick wall. Okay, in particular, think about the mortar in the joints, between those bricks. And so that mortar goes between, right? It goes between it to make it solid. And so this is like intercession. In between the bricks, it binds them together and it strengthens them. Without the mortar going between the bricks, the wall going to collapse. And this is where many of us are falling short at. We're not standing in the gap. So if you want to break down the wall, the easiest way to begin right now is build the altar. I don't want to preach. Build the altar and stand in the gap. I taught my grandbabies that when they were real little, in my prayer room, and I showed them that. This is where you come when you're going through in school. This is our place where we bring it to the Daddy God, for you to repent for your part and let me stand in the gap with you. Let me tell you something. If you want to break down a wall, if you want to stop just chipping at these things, just going around on the surface of it, I challenge you right now to pull the whole wall of hell down. Because guess what? It's going to give way anyway if you're not really, really standing in the gap. If you're not really, really looking at, am I really in the place of proxy? What am I doing? That's why the enemy knows that I can take the soul. That's why the enemy says he has legal rights, right? So we need to make sure that we look at, where am I weak at? Where are the gaps? Or where are the chips? Where are the things that are weak? Where is the spiritual armor that I need to bring and make it stronger at? Even if we're not consciously aware of these things, the enemy knows. So we got to make sure that we spend time to watch, pray, and study the tactics of the devil. The enemy have watched us for years, and you can rest assured he never get exhausted. And so, but we've compromised our truth. We've compromised our self-advancement. We've compromised our bodies. We've compromised everything. And I know I'm talking. Sandy's talking. I compromised my own health, behind stress, overeating to the point, and stress to the point, and bitterness to the point that I had to wear a colostomy bag for a whole year and a half. Had to poop out of my side. I know I'm talking to somebody. People having heart attacks. So we need to know that pride, this contention, this resentfulness, these are triggers. The enemy wants to take these because he knows you're very vulnerable. He knows that you're walking around in religious fear. He knows that we're walking around in divisiveness and bitterness and backbiting and being rebellious against leadership and doing witchcraft. He knows already. The enemy already knows these people in these conditions have given these things legal rights, and that's why it's leaping from generation to generation. This is why our kids have got murder on their hearts, and they don't want to obey at school, and they're taking drugs to medicate the sounds and the voices and the things that they're hearing that really came from the womb that they were rejected. I don't want you. I hate this baby. I hate I'm pregnant. So there needs to be a balance. My God, in the pulpit. I don't want to preach. Let me get off of here. Every time I want my blood pressure to go up, let me calm it down. Okay. So I'm going to close with this tonight. So when we intercede for one another, our chief purpose is to fill in the gaps, okay? That gap is what? In one another's spiritual armor, to hold us up for the weak one so the enemy won't gain advantage, all right? So we need to make sure that also that we walk in love, okay? This is the only way they're going to know us. It's the only way the children are going to believe us. We got to demonstrate love. We can't keep buying things and giving things and never demonstrate love. Many of them, like I said, was unwanted from the womb. Many of them was tolerated in the womb. So they still feel rejected. I went on and had you because I had to have you. Many of us don't realize that. And many of the kids came out with depression and schizophrenia and bipolar because they was angry because the mother was abandoned by the daddy and so on. It's a bastard. But you better hear me. God still can sanctify that individual. God's blood still works. So by this, the Bible tells us, Jesus says, by this all shall know that you are my disciples if you have love toward one another. That's John 13:35. So how can we say we love one another and not pray for one another? How can we say that we confess our faults when we won't repent, when we won't forgive. Part of our responsibilities in order for us to follow God and be able to intervene and to really be, true leaders and people that say that we are caring for our children is to repent for ourselves and realize your own faults and take care of that as a couple if you're married. Get together. There's great power when husbands and wives come together and work on the things of their family tree. They stand in the gap, okay, to realize that this can happen. We can come out of this. We can carry one another's burdens. We can see how these things can be lifted from our generation and take the rights away. Well, I'm going to get off of here. Lord have mercy. Whew, okay. So much to talk about. Next week, I pray I can get part 2 and talk a little bit more about the part that I've got to talk to you about a little bit more deeper, and that is to look at the mind, because many of the forces from these particular 3 are being governed from the weakness of our mind, those areas that has caused us to have a passive mind behind so much hurt and so much abuse and so much rejection and rebellion and all of this stuff. So we got to talk about these so we know how to be able to process people out as they come to us and not be so quick to really lay hands on and holler, say, come out of here, devil. We got to make sure that we're processing them out and to make sure that we look at what are these things that could be passive, that could be permissive, that we've given permissive legal rights to the demons of our generation. God bless you. I pray that this has helped you. We'll talk next week on B3. We'll get part 2. That is of this B2. I need to be saying B2 part 2 to talk more about the passive mind, the subconscious mind, and the thing that the enemy is really, really destroying us about in regards to repentance and unforgiveness, and making sure that we stand in the gap and build a family altar and get them 10 Commandments. Will you please put them somewhere that the devil know you ain't playing. Talk to you soon.